The embargo has lifted. There is a ton of content out from everyone right now, but I want to talk about these vampire bloodlines. We've been talking about them from a lore perspective. We've gone into the Strigoi, we've gone into the Lamian vampires, and some of the other ones soon to come. But I want to talk about how they're going to be implemented in Total War Warhammer 2 post Curse of the Vampire Coast. So what we're going to go through today is each one of these lords. Spoilers ahead. If you want to be surprised about the skill trees for these lords and some of the really cool nods to the lore, please, guys, go ahead and shut the video down. I don't want to spoil it for you. I totally understand if you want to go through content first for the very first time and experience it on your own rather than kind of see it secondhand like this. I personally have not even really gone through everything in the sense of playing it. I've only done... What you're going to see is only thing I've done because I am kind of on the same ilk. I really want to play the game myself. So we're going to start with the Necroc vampires. We're going to go into the next ones after that and talk about each one of them, what the three kind of levels of their awakening are, and then what the individual skill line is like for these special bloodline vampires. But before we jump into that, let's talk about the Blood Kiss. Awaken ancient and powerful vampire bloodlines and consume blood kisses. Ooh, sounds funny. Blood kisses. Which are acquired by killing faction leaders in battle, by assassination, or by vacillating factions. So, right here it says that I don't know why it says other one, but we have got what I did to do this was we killed the leader of Zufbar here. I don't remember his name. We wounded him. You start off with one as Isabella von Karstein. Actually, all of von Karsteins. Isabella, Manfred, and Vlad all start with one blood kiss. And then we researched the Lamian Book of Blood to give us that one blood kiss. I did this just to rush to the very first one so we could show this off. But if you're wondering a way that you can rush, that's how you do it. You do the blood kiss gained from the research, takes about 10 turns. You choose a von Karstein lord, take that immediate, and then you just have to kill or assassinate a character or kill a faction leader in battle, and that was pretty easy for me. I mean, we're on turn 6 and we already did it. So let's take a look at the Necroc vampire. Tainted and foul, the Necroc's physical corruption is transmuted into supreme magical power as soon as they enter the ranks of the undead. Really how that actually works is... excuse me, CA, let me correct your lore. So the Necroc vampires are of the ilk of Waswaron, one of the true primogenitor of their line. And Waswaron dabbled with Dar, D-H-A-R, which is really, I guess you could say, kind of like the Wind of Magic for dark magic, the one that you see all Dark Elves using. It's not quite like that, but this is just the easiest way to describe it. And through the constant use of Dar, the intention of it was to prevent the need for Necroc vampires to sustain themselves off of blood, because they saw in the future, Waswaron saw that a vision granted him from Nagash saying that the entire world is going to be ruled by bone, and vampires are going to rule as its ruling caste. But he saw an issue with that there's no blood. So we used Dar to kind of help stem the necessity for blood and vampirism. So, what does that mean, though? Remember, these guys are the kind of arch wizards of the vampire bloodlines. So these guys in tabletop, they could be level 5 wizards. They were super strong. So, the very first one grants us increased research rate. As you progress, you get more winds of magic, plus 20 on your starting amount, and then an additional research rate of 25%. Then, the last one, so you have a total of plus 75% research rate from awakening the lords themselves, and a whopping total of what? 20 or 40? Or is this cumulative? It looks like, it looks like it's cumulative. So, at the very end, you're going to have 20 winds of magic, 25 research rate, and negative 10% upkeep for all units across all armies, which is actually pretty substantial. The other ones kind of focus their upkeep reductions, and we'll talk about them when we talk about their individual lord. So the Necroc is one I would actually recommend to awaken first, simply just for that research rate. I would probably go with the Blood Dragons after that, but we'll talk about them as we kind of go further down the line here. Let's take a look at kind of see him right here. Kind of has portions of the vampire and portions of the necromancer on him. Looks pretty sick. So let's take a look at his skills. Now, I believe I have another So this is what the skills are of... Oh, let's do this real quick. So just to kind of have a juxtaposition for you guys, so you can see the difference between a Vampire Lord. So Dark Pact, Unliving Host, Creatures of the Night, and Aura of Dark Majesty. And if I hop back to our Necrarch, we see Creatures of the Night, we see the Unliving Host, but then we see some additional things in their red line alone. The blue line is the exact same for all lords in the vampire counts. So all the vampire lords and then all of the bloodline lords have the exact same blue line, except for this. Necrarch. The Sworn Scions are masters of the art of necromancy. To dabble in such will be a boon. So plus 36 growth at the very end here. So this is the same for all the bloodline lords. We'll ignore the blue line from now on. Now, the red line changes depending on the lord. So you can see here the Unliving Host. This is zombies, skeletons, and crypt ghouls. But Call of the Night. This is Felbats, Direwolves, and Black Knights. Evil Souls. This is Cairn Wraiths and Hex Wraiths. Melee attack and magic resistance. Creatures of the Night is, again, Crypt Horrors, Vargheists, Varghouls, and Terrorgeists. Walking Dead. So you can see that overall overhaul for each one of the red lines is present here. They did say that was coming, and rather than being placed on the vampire lords themselves, it's being placed on each one of these bloodline vampire lords. So you can see the Waking Dead, which gives Graveguard and Blood Knight bonuses, charge, speed, melee defense, and melee attack. So just across the board, it's going to make your army a lot stronger. In the same way that we see the red line doing for a lot of the Total War Warhammer 2 lords, right? So we see that kind of progressing. You get access to Magical Animus, 16 to leadership, and then, of course, the typical kind of tier 2 of red line, followed by Undeath Resurgent. Now, these two will be, this whole portion will be the same going forward, and we'll only talk about minor changes here, if there are any. I believe the majority of the red line is the same, but it is just kind of worth talking about. Now, the Necrarch Vampire himself has access to quite a bit of variety. He has the lore of vampires. He has the lore of beasts. He has the lore of shadows. So, I'm sorry, of death. So you see Spirit Leech here. You see Pawn's Impenetrable Pelt. You see the Curse of Undeath here, the lore attribute of the lore of vampires. You see Raised Dead. You see then Curse of Honor here. Then the Purple Sun of Xurius. Now, in the actual multiplayer, you can have the lore attribute of... Oh, here it is. Here, Wild Heart and Life Leeching. There we go. Lore attributes of beasts and death, respectively. Now you can see here that there's one skill chain that is specific to each and every one of these bloodlines. Cynosure, see the future, change the present. Miscast base chance reduction, and a magic power reserve and starting amount increase. So if you couple this with his the level 2 portion of Awaken, he's going to start with 25 winds of magic, which is pretty significant. The Nehekara's noble blood. The dark secrets of necromantic lore can be found in the cursed scrolls hidden within the lairs of the oldest vampire lords, the Necrarch family. Now again, more miscast, more winds of magic, and number of spell uses +2 for Raised Dead and Raised Dead upgraded. So that's pretty sweet as well. And then, for the most part, the yellow line here is going to be mostly the same, but we've got Dark Protection. This is exclusive to the Necrarchs. Those who watch proceedings from behind the Veil of Death may reach through to aid their disciples when required to intervene. This gives a whopping 22% damage resistance and a 27 bonus to melee defense here. So again, these guys are meant to be these kind of caster lords, right? These gentlemen of the night that kind of ply their trade through all their necromantic power. So we see that here with the Necrarch bloodline, and I'm so excited to kind of keep this going as we go through the rest of the bloodlines here. So let's jump over to our next one here. We'll do Strigoi next. So here we have our Strigoi. Remember the bestial juggernauts here, vengeful monstrosities who dwell among cemetery graves. The broken-minded Strigoi embrace the primal force buried deep within us all. And I wish I had like a vampire buried deep within me, coming out and like going to nightclubs. Why does every vampire always own a fucking nightclub? Sorry, off point. So take a look at the Strigoi gifts here. Keep in mind here, guys, you can go into multiple bloodlines here. You're not locked into just sticking into one. If you start with the Necrarch, which I think should always be your first, that 25% research rate, that's huge. And you can get access to it very quickly if you're a von Karstein. But then you can jump on over here to von Karstein if you want to get access to the Sylvanian crossbowmen and handgunners. But we'll talk about him in a bit. So you can bounce around as you see fit. So taking a look here, ambush success chance plus 20%. The Vampire Corruption plus 5 for all provinces, which is really great to kind of get that early spread out when you don't have a lot of Balefire Brazier set up. And then lastly, we have Public Order minus 60% penalty due to presence or lack of corruption, which is a pretty nice and very thematic, right? The Strigoi vampires in their time of Morcane were seen as kind of having this very law-abiding empire of people, the Strigani, the Empire of Strigos. So this plays very heavily into their overarching lore. Let's take a look at Zacharias. Everyone has the same last name, so I don't know if that's by design or not. So you can see here's a little bit different than the Strigoi Ghoul King that we see. This is now called a Strigoi Vampire Lord. It's different in the actual multiplayer screen. So let's take a look at his skill line. Unliving Host, Call of the Night, Evil Souls. So again, this is the new red line that we're going to be seeing here. Carriages of Death. So this is overall the same pretty much for every single one of them. Even Undeath and Magical Animus is about the same. I could have swore I'd seen something different last night when I was taking a look at this, but it looks like I am completely wrong. So you can see the red line is completely revamped and redone as compared to the original Vampire Lord, which is definitely different. And the blue line, for the most part, is entirely different. I'm sorry, it is the same for each one of these new Bloodline Lords as well. So now with the Strigoi Vampire, we again have the access to the lore of death. We again have access to the lore of vampires, but this time it's more lore of death. We have Soul Blight, we have Doom and Darkness, and in addition to Spirit Leech, we also have Gaze of Nagash and Command of the Unliving. Now, Unliving, of course, can summon Crypt Horrors or Crypt Ghouls, depending on if you overcast it or not. So you've got that capability here. And we see that as a nice little custom package for the Strigoi Ghoul King. And he just has access to the lore attribute for the lore of vampires, which is different, of course, for Strigoi, as we saw. Now, the yellow line that does damage here, again, pretty much the same. We have Bloodlust, we have Red Fury, nothing new there. Remember, this whole second portion was not present in the line of the Necrarch. So this is kind of just to show you how less of a combatant the Necrarch is supposed to be. Now, of course, we've got the Strigoi Blood King, or Ghoul King special line here. Now, Curse of Vorag. Vorag the Bloody Tooth was the first actual Ghoul King. He was the gentleman, the gentleman, he was a fucking vicious vampire that rose to prominence after Morcane fell to try and create that Strigos Empire. He created the Tower of Vorag in the Plane of Bone, far to the east in the Darklands, but he was unfortunately killed by a errant bolt from a goblin bolt thrower. But this gives him a whopping 10% physical resistance. Bestial Monstrosity increases his hit points by 20%. And Ghoul King of Ashoron, he gets this ability that replenishes his health and gives health, and also gives him some leadership. Now, it looks like I unfortunately haven't gotten to level 10, so I don't know if one of these locks out in exchange for the other. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. So you have plus 10 to melee attack for infinite hatred. Bestial Force plus 20% to weapon strength. Like, look at the weapon strength on the left over there. 431, boom, 513. That's, of course, not including stuff like Master Strike or any of the other buffs to weapon strength damage. So you can be a real powerhouse here. Claws of Morcane then also gives you a 34-second buff with plus 40% AP in there. Like, that is so huge. His base AP value is... His base AP value is 305. So, man, that'd be just a disgusting amount of armor piercing coming in. Now, we also have Grotesque Court, physical resistance and leadership of Crypt Ghouls and Crypt Horrors, which is actually very, very good. Now, seeing where you start in Sylvania, having Crypt Ghouls, they're actually very strong and potent against a lot of the Empire kind of chaff troops you deal with. They can stand up pretty well to a lot of what you see with Greenskins. Not so great against, of course, dwarves because they have an armored front line, but having 10% physical resist on them is really nothing to scoff at. That's a pretty good substantial buff to them, especially if you combine it with, which one was it? Creatures of the Night. So a 12 weapon strength and 12% I'm sorry, 12% weapon strength and 12 charge bonus. I mean, you can get some pretty beefy ghouls here. Now, Monstrosities of More reduces the cost and upkeep for your Crypt Horrors, and their duration for the Crypt Horror as well. Grave Eaters reduces the upkeep for Crypt Ghouls, and their increases the recruitment rank for Crypt Ghouls. Then you, oh, by the way, all of the lords have immortality to start with, so you don't have to worry about summoning them up and losing them, which would be shit. That's why they start with this. It looks like the yellow line, all the character skills line is yellow immediately because they all have that from the start. You have Grave Ward, which gives you some 10% to missile resist, and then of course the preferred mount of any Strigoi Ghoul King, the Terrorgeist. So now that we've gone through the Strigoi here, guys, let's jump on over to the Lamians. I think the Lamians are pretty cool here. They're a little bit different from the other lords, so I think it's worth it to kind of jump into them next. The Mistresses of Subterfuge, the Masters of Infiltrating, or the Master Infiltrator, I guess. Cunning and deceptive, no other vampires have infiltrated human society in the same way as Lamian's shadowy sisterhood. Now, we've talked about this before in our lore video, kind of discussing how Neferata, after taking up the Silver Pinnacle, kind of sent her Lamian vampires into all the courts of Tilia, Estalia, Bretonia, Empire, pretty much kind of swarming them with these beautiful kind of wives and courtesans and mistresses that actually are the ones that are pulling the strings behind a lot of pivotal events in the Warhammer world. This plays very heavily into, of course, the way that they're supposed to be represented in Total War Warhammer 2. So take a look at their abilities here. Minus 50% upkeep for all heroes and for all characters, of course, which is very nice here because the point of this is to get more hero characters out so you can do more hero actions and do more assassinations, more wounding, steal technology, stuff like that. And that plays, again, very heavily into the kind of theme, the lore of Lamians. Then we also have Vigor Loss Reduction Medium, and also Campaign Line of Sight 150%, which is pretty huge. Allows you to really kind of see a little bit further down the line and kind of be able to plan your stuff a little bit better. So, again, very reminiscent of the way Lamians would really be played out. And again, you want Lamians, I think, depending on how you want to play your campaign. Are you very much a hero-dependent campaign player? Do you want to play a vampire count playthrough where you only use vampires? Because this would be a really great way to get a lot of them in your army without having to pay a ton of money for it. So, by the hero choice, I mean. But you can have a lot of fun with the Lamians, and I'm really stoked to kind of see how we see them play out here. What is this? Oh, Lamian gifts. Oh, yay! You can see it as a persistent buff up here. Let's take a look at their abilities here. Now again, blue and red line, exactly the same. Nothing changed there. Now, the lore of shadows comes to play here, and the lore of vampires. And namely here, just those two. We don't see a third mixed in here. We see Enfeebling Foe, we see the Penumbral Pendulum, Raised Dead, Occam's Mind Razor, Winds of Death. Really the best of both worlds. Raised Dead, I would argue, is the best ability from the lore of vampires. Now, you also get an Invocation of Heck, which is great, and you also get Wind of Death. Curse of Years, I think, is a little bit niche. Dance Macabre, I think, is way better for the Blood Dragon, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And I think that Raised Dead and Wind of Death are going to play perfectly into this. Now, Enfeebling Foe are going to work so well. Pendulum as well. Two wind spells that are really strong. Occam's Mind Razor, you can never go wrong with that. I mean, if you play the tabletop, you know how strong Occam's Mind Razor was. Hoo-hoo-hoo! I didn't mean for that to sound like Tigger. Okay, so taking a look at the rest of her line, she does have a different thing in her base yellow line, though. She has lightning reflexes. This increases her speed and her damage resistant. That's kind of indicative of what we see in the tabletop in the lore, and how they kind of use their speed more so than their brawn. And they're all about kind of mind games, but also acting very, very quickly and kind of blindingly fast. Moving down the line, then we have Transfix. Now this reduces, or is plus 22% damage resistance and plus 24% speed. So it's an upgraded lightning reflexes, but also imbues discourage. So minus 16 to leadership to anyone you're attacking there. So it's kind of nice. Now, these abilities here are pretty cool because they are the actual spells from the tabletop, from the 6th edition. We talked about this in our Lamian Vampire special or lore video about their special abilities, and Innocence Lost was one of them. How it gave you actually looks so inoffensive and vulnerable that an enemy lowers his defenses, which is when they strike, which is actually very similar to the lore text in the book. But in the book, it actually confers a a means of defense, basically. It makes it so that you have a harder time hitting that character. This gives us a bonus versus infantry, which is pretty interesting here. Deathly Vigor gives us perfect vigor, which is awesome. We're going to see our vampires just running amok across the battlefield. And then lastly, Seduction. Now, this gives us a -2 melee attack and a -2 speed for anyone in an area around the caster, which is nice. And a lot of the debuffs from the vampire lines are actually hex area and rather than just a targeted ability, which I find very, very, very strong. Now, of course, she can be mounted on up to a zombie dragon, and there is the ability Grave Ward, gives us a missile resist, Hive Mind, campaign line of sight increase, construction cost reduction for all vampire lair chain buildings, and construction time reduction for them as well. Queen Bee, a -50% cost to hero action, a 50% increase to the hero success chance, and enemy hero action success chance -25%. So with the Lamians, you're really going to be playing a game of subterfuge, of really getting up close and personal with your heroes, having them have a high likelihood to succeed, as well as the enemy having a high likelihood to fail. So I really like that kind of play there. I do kind of wish that the Lamians kind of had like some sort of modified intrigue in court, or at court, that the High Elves get. I think that'd be really, really, really cool. And maybe it would only apply to the human races, because there's only human Lamians. There's no elf Lamians. There's no dwarf Lamians. There's no... I think there's Arabian Lamians that I don't remember. I can't recall 100. Oh, no, there are. Pretty much any human, there's a Lamian of. So I'd love to see that as like an ability here. That's something that a modder could easily place into the game. And we see that with the dwarf forging being modded into the game before it's made it an official thing. So maybe we see that for the Lamian, like kind of Lamian intrigue in court. So let's finish up here with our Lamians, and let's move over to our von Karstein line now. I'm, of course, saving the Blood Dragons for last because it's my absolute favorite, and it's the one I've actually played the most of, so I can talk way, way, way more about it. So let's jump on over to our von Karstein Vampire Lords. Now, for those of you that want to get access to the Sylvanian crossbowmen, to the Sylvanian handgunners, von Karstein is going to be the way to go. You can see him, he's kind of got the modified look of many Vampire Lords there. Some badass shieldery, cool helmet action. Just in case this does get brought up, I am not showcasing the abilities because I want you guys to experience them yourselves. They're really, really cool, and I love a lot of the thematic everything behind them, so I don't want this to be like a 100% spoiler video. Go have some fun with the units. Go put yourself in a custom battle when the game comes out and try them out, because they're okay and awesome. Now, the von Karstein here, casualty replenishment rate plus 20%, and then access to the crossbowmen. You get the handgunners at rank 3. I thought it was rank 2. Public order plus 5, and then finally your handgunners. So, if I were a gambling man, I would probably go Neckarch 1. Von Karstein almost to level 3, maybe just to level 1. I mean, the handgunners I don't think are going to be too huge. I don't think that the vampires need archery so much that it's necessary to get to number 3. We'll talk about the Blood Dragon here, but I think the Blood Dragon is pretty important to get to at least 1 or 2. And then, which one was this? Rank 2 with the Shigoi is pretty great as well. So really, 1 for the Neckarch, 1 for von Karstein, 1 for the Blood Dragon, and maybe 2 for Shigoi. That's like, I think, like a power move there. You could then, of course, go right here for the upkeep for all heroes if you want to go have your hero route. I don't play a lot of heroes. I usually just get 1 of each, and that's about it. So you can jump that route if you want, but von Karstein, I think, are going to be one of the ones that everyone's going to pick up in their new campaign playthrough of the Vampire Counts. Let's take a look at their skills. And especially because if you start as any of the von Karstein Lords, you start with a Blood Kiss. So it's thematic at that point, right? So again, same thing, blue and red, absolutely the same. Now, we can see that for this, we have a Lord of Beasts, Flock of Doom right there, Transformation of Kadon, which summons a Vargulf this time, and then the rest is all the really good spells from the lore of vampires. This time, Dance Macabre, as well as Raise Dead, Wind of Death, and then, of course, Invocation of Heck. Now, the red line here is the exact same. You get Bloodlust, you get Red Fury, nothing special there. Red Fury was actually a ability in the War 6th edition that was only for Blood Dragons. So it's interesting to kind of see that there. Now, Fellnest is this is our von Karstein bloodline skill line. Every single one of them has it right here. We've already kind of gone over them. But Fellnest, minus 50% for all forest chain buildings, minus 1 for forest chain building, minus 1 cost or construction time, and minus 100% upkeep for Fellbat units. So you can just swarm Fellbats, which are really great against, say, Empire. Not so awesome against dwarfs, but you know they get the trick done for knocking down any kind of artillery or range, just kind of keep them locked down for a bit. Mist form. Some vampires can change into a wolf, a great bat, or a whirl of mist. In doing so, they gain all the advantages of their new form. So increase in speed, missile resistance, and physical resistance for direwolves as well. That is pretty cool because direwolves are a really great early game harassment unit that is strong all the way up into the late game. So you really get a lot more use out of them. And I think Call of the Night, yeah, Call of the Night increases their speed and their charge bonus as well, so you can have them kind of hunting things down a little bit faster. Now, Brooding Horrors, this is of course going to be your Vargeist, so plus 40%. Oh, that's supposed to be minus 40% upkeep for Vargeist, I think. Yeah, I would hope so. So recruitment rank plus 2 for Fellbats and Vargeist units, and recruitment rank duration for Vargeist units is minus 1 with a minimum of 1. And lastly, Storm of the Night, which is so strong and awesome. Basically, kind of think of it as Tempest for the high magic, but instead it does damage to everything, and it's super strong. I love it, and also like drastically slows things down. Like it's a really cool looking ability. It's kind of like a reimagined version of, like, think of it as a combination between Blade Storm. I'm sorry, not Blade Storm. Well, yeah, I guess Blade Storm a little bit. Tempest and Skullstorm from the Lord and Kahr. It's a pretty sick ability. Of course, all the way up to a zombie dragon. Then you get Sylvanian Marksman, which is a range and missile damage increase for both the crossbowmen and the handgunners. Grave Ward, 10% missile resistance, nothing special there. Benevolent Overlord, which gives you the ability Guardian, is a 18% physical resistance buff, which is huge. And then lastly, Cattle Herder, gain 1 additional Sylvanian crossbowman. Now, that's something I want to go into real quick. You get them actually through Regiment of Renown. You can summon them up just like that, and boom, they're immediately a part of your army. And it's like that, just like that for the handgunners as well. So this tells me that we're limited to 1 right now. I don't know if that's 1 as a whole or just 1 in this area, but I'm assuming it's 1 as a whole. And getting access to the Cattle Herder gives you an additional crossbowman. Cows, people, they are all basically the same at the end of the day. Oh, you slick sons of bitches. So, without further ado, guys, that does our von Karsteins. And, oh, you know what? Let me actually talk about that really quick. I think the von Karstein will be the most competitive in multiplayer. I think that the Blood Dragon has a really strong place in multiplayer, but I think the ability to summon up a Vargulf is very strong. You have the ability here. Storm of the Night is in... Actually, I thought it was called Bloodstorm, but Storm of the Night in multiplayer is actually very strong. And, I mean, Flock of Doom is not overly strong, but, I mean, you could take Invocation, Raise Dead, and Flock if you didn't want to take Transformation. And you have a really great means of just doing a lot of really good damage to lightly armored units with Flock of Doom. So, I mean, I think it's a really good magic kit, too. And like I said, I think he's going to be one of the more competitive lords of the rest of them, because they all have, of course, the hunger. Now, let us go into my favorite, the Blood Dragons. Oh yeah, the moment I've been waiting for, at least, the Blood Dragon Vampire. So, oh man, he just looks so cool. He just looks so goddamn cool. So once the noblest of the Empire's knightly orders, the Blood Dragons are a ferocious force in battle, with a bond far stronger than any living knights. Of course, we know these to be the defenders of the Blood Temple, or Abhorrash's own Blood Dragon vampire line. And Abhorrash, after leaving the Temple of Blood in Lamia, traveled the world to kind of find the most honorable and the most martially poetic? What the fuck? Martially skillful individuals, and turn them into vampires. He wanted this cast of people that were honorable, that lived by a code, a creed, and they weren't just these, blood-sucking creatures of the night that only killed innocent people. The kind of credo of the Blood Dragon is to only kill and feed on those worthy that died in a duel that you actually kind of encounter or challenge them to. And eventually they get the name Blood Dragon because Abhorrash climbs like the tallest mountain, the tallest peak, and he finds this dragon at the top of it, and he fights the dragon for like a day and a night. And at the end of it, he casts the body of the dragon, smotes him upon the mountaintop, tosses him over the side of the mountain, and it cures his vampirism in the sense that he no longer has the hunger for blood. He now is a vampire without the kind of crux, the issues of a vampire. So he kind of challenges and charges all of his noble followers to go out and do the same thing. Find something that breaks your vampirism. I have found mine, and come to me when you have done it. And he's the only blood dragon to do it. So he kind of has the that mark of being the single strongest character in the Warhammer lore. That is, I guess, super up for debate because every single character is the strongest lord in that respective race's lore. So you kind of have to be very careful with that moniker. But I don't know of many other characters that can do that. But I guess you could argue that a Narian killed a greater demon. Still, let's take a look at the Blood Dragon gifts here. So plus 10% weapon strength for Cav units, plus 100% unit experience for all units and all armies, and then immune to untainted attrition, which is so huge. Vampiric corruption and untainted attrition are two of the hardest things to kind of fight against and with, depending on if you're Empire going into Sylvania or Sylvania leaving into the Empire. So it's a pretty huge bonus there, I think. Let's take a look at the actual skills here of Zacharias Baricimere. You can see there he's got this awesome, huge crested helmet here. You see that pretty similar to a lot of the Blood Dragons in the actual tabletop, but for the most part, he is a Blood Knight kind of repurposed lord and turned into or repurposed character turned into a lord. Got some nice, lovely lipstick on, some piercing red eyes. I'll be honest with you guys, if I look at all these lords, and I look at the lords that the game launched with, Manfred, Vlad, and Isabella, or they're from Warhammer 1. Manfred's got like cataracts. Vlad has barely got perceptible red eyes. Isabella has some pretty fucking horrifying eyes. But all the vampire coast have these very terrifying red and black piercing eyes. All of these guys have some pretty terrifying like yellow and black and red eyes. Like they're all really, really gnarly looking. Like you can even see this guy. Got those piercing red and black eyes that you see that Lord Luther Harkin and Noctilus have. Let's take a look at these skills, right? Sorry, I gotta get ahead of myself. So again, very same stuff. Nothing new here. As I double check. Yeah, nothing new here at all. Now, the lore is very simple. It's all one whole line. There's not even a second tier to it. There's no arcane conduit. There's nothing like that. It's just strictly the lore vampires. That's it. Boom. And honestly, if I were a gambling man, I don't know why I'm such a gambling man in my axioms today, but Invocation to Heck and then Dance Macabre. Maybe Raise Dead. I mean, Raise Dead's always really strong to have, but honestly, Dance Macabre is so strong for this character just to get that increase in melee attack. Like, look at this melee attack already. It's already 70. You're going to jack that up to 96 with this bad boy. Whew. Get Hunger. That's a huge. Bloodlust and Red Fury are the same because, again, those are actually Blood Dragon special abilities from the tabletop. Now, take a look at these skill lines because they are a whopper. Doom Rider, minus 50% construction cost for all Binding Circle chain buildings, minus 1 construction time for Binding Circles, minus 50% upkeep for Black Knight units, and minus 1 turn production for the Black Knights with lances and barding. Then, that's just the intro. Then, Strength of Steel, plus 20 armor to a whopping 115, plus 25 armor piercing, and then bonus versus large plus 22. Like, look at that. Do you see what I see when I do what I do? So he starts with a bonus versus infantry. You're just going to give him a bonus versus large if you give Strength of Steel. So he is the only character in the game to have bonus versus large and bonus versus infantry. Holy shit. And AP. 178 AP, but that's, of course, not as strong. But that does get stronger, trust me. Heart Piercing here gives him a 40% bonus to AP, plus 30% charge, 36% charge bonus, and he gets a Sundered Armor ability, so to reduce things to minus 30. Now, this is clearly an augment on himself, so that's not the best thing here, but I think it's some of the other ones are in an aura around him, so we'll get to them. So Grave Sentinels, minus 40% upkeep for Graveguard, and minus a reduction to the recruitment cost by 50%, and the recruitment duration by 1. Disciple of Abhorash, increase their missile resistance to 20%, and then 10% physical resist. Lastly, Honor or Death, plus 11% damage resistance. Like, holy shit, man. Like, the Blood Dragon Vampire is now, and I'm speaking outside of this and into multiplayer, is the strongest one-on-one lord that we have been able to encounter. Turn and I tested the Blood Dragon Lord against Kolek, and he won without using Invocation and a Heck. That was the kind of like baseline. We won't use Invocation and a Heck. I mean, I did use Van Hale's Dance Macabre, but still, I was able to beat Kolek. I was able to beat pretty much any lord. Another a matching Dark Elf Lord on a dragon or a High Elf Lord on a dragon got shit canned. There was nothing that we could really put the Blood Dragon against that actually lost in a one-on-one duel. So, and this might, of course, change here. This might have actually changed since we last did our testing. So please take that with a grain of salt. But for all my intents and purposes, the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord is the strongest lord in the game as far as a one-on-one duelist. Of course, has a lot of glaring weaknesses in and of himself. I mean, he does get Graveguards, that you can add that with this. You're gonna a whopping 30% missile resistance, which is pretty good. He has access to a zombie dragon, which is just so goddamn potent. And then lastly, the Ordo Draconis. Minus 40% upkeep for your Blood Knights, recruitment cost for the Blood Knights, and turn duration, then income from post-battle loot plus 10%. So, honestly, in my opinion too, as far as a campaign lord goes, this is the best lord. You get access to way cheaper Blood Knights, you get access to way cheaper Graveguard, and you get access to some pretty quick and easy means of getting a Black Knights. I mean, I think that this is a very, 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 very strong lord by comparison to the other ones. I think that the Blood Dragon always is kind of stood out in my mind as like the best one, but you can make that Blender Lord that you had in Tabletop. He also has, Frenzy. Bam! I mean, shit, dude. Like, he's got everything. So that kind of sums up all of our new bloodlines here. Now, again, if I were to choose this in a kind of, how would I kind of net deck this, min max this? Probably go 1 to research rate for the Necrarch. That's my very first one, just to get research churning out. You could go 1 into Blood Dragons, maybe even 2 or 3, depending on. I'd say it depends on which bloodline you want to make your main bloodline, but I think that this can't be ignored. This can't be ignored too, because that casualty replenishment rate is pretty huge, and it'll be nice just to have some base archery. I could do without a lot of this. I think Vampire Corruption level 2 here is great, but unless you're mainlining Strigoi, I don't think you have to worry about it. And Lamian Gift level 1 is pretty good. So I guess you could go 1, 2, 3, the rest into Blood Dragon or Strigoi or however you wanted to go. But that's my opinion as far as what bloodlines kind of shine out the others as far as like these you need to take. Like, I mean, Immune to Untainted Attrition, I would argue is a pretty like necessary component, but it just, again, depends on how you want to play. So, guys, I'm so excited for you guys to jump in on the new Vampire Counts updates. I know that I'm going to have a lot of campaign videos coming out, a lot of streams coming. We'll be streaming on Monday. Don't you worry. I'm going to be at BlizzCon for the next 2-3 days. So, unfortunately, I cannot stream over this weekend. I'm so sorry, guys, but I do have plenty of campaign VODs coming up here for you. We'll be playing as Aranessa Saltspite, and we'll be streaming Solasha Direfin. It's going to be a lot of fun. Solasha has a lot of really cool mechanics I want to talk about, and we're just going to go balls out. I'm still so excited for everything here, guys, so bear with me. Let's have some fun. Can't wait for you guys to try out the Bloodlines. If you have any questions about anything, I will be watching YouTube even when I'm not here over the weekend. So please, by all means, comment below. Let me know your thoughts on everything. Are you happy about these Bloodlines? Do you think that they're stupid? Do you think that they're really awesome? Some noble soul put that Creative Assembly is created the 9th edition of Warhammer Fantasy, and you know what? I'm beginning to think that that's true. just to see my lovely Bloodlines back. But as always, guys, have a good one. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check out my Patreon. But have a good one, and take care.